We were saying that your last name is is pronounced how someone in Boston would say lawyer.
When I was in Massachusetts prison, everyone thought that was a funny.
You've heard that one before.
It was like the 100th time. I was still expecting me to laugh. Lawyer, are you a lawyer? Are you a good lawyer?
Welcome to Crawlspace. I'm Tim here today with Lance. Lance, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic today, Tim. I can't tell the listeners what kind of guest we have on today because I don't want to spoil too much of it, but it is a wild ride that this person is delivering to us. His life has been incredible, and it's an honor, honestly, to have him on the show and to have him open up and be so candid with us. He's reached a point in his life where this is now his story, and he's able to tell his story, and he's able to laugh about it, and he's come from a place where he's healed. And he's helping other people heal as well. But he was also a very prolific bank robber. And Tim, right now, you're robbing me of knowing how you are. How are you today?
Doing great. Thanks a lot. Yes, in this conversation, we speak with the Beirut Bandit, Lance. His name is Joe Loya, and he robbed somewhere between 30 and 40 banks between 1988 and 1989. He actually says 30, even though I think Wikipedia says up to 40. But yes, he is also the subject of a new podcast from our friend Steve Fishman's podcast feed called The Burden, and you can check it out. There are links in the show notes. This season of The Burden is called Get the Money and Run.
And at the top of this episode, that was actually us laughing with Joe about his last name because we thought we were really funny. His last name sounds like the way someone in Massachusetts would pronounce lawyer, Loya. And he had heard that like 100 times while he was in prison. And that was something that we just had a good laugh with him about before we started recording the interview. So we didn't want to leave that out. It was just sort of a really organic moment that wasn't supposed to be on this episode. And you can find out more about Joe and everything he does on his website, Joe Loya, that's Loya, and it's .ltd. So not a .com there, not a .fm or .tv. This is .ltd. And be sure to pick up his book, The Man Who Outgrew His Prison Cell, which is a memoir, and it's absolutely fantastic. The New Yorker says genuinely thrilling.
Yeah, very cool book and really great interview. It was really cool speaking with Joe. He spent a lot of time in prison, and boy, he's got a great story to tell. And I highly recommend the season of The Burden, Get the Money and Run. It is pretty wild. It will raise your eyebrows, I promise you.
And you mentioned Steve Fishman, and his company is called Orbit Media, a storyteller's company, and that's orbitmedia.fm.
Very cool. All right, everyone. So please follow us on social media at Crawlspace Podcast or Crawlspace Pod. We're going to break real quick for commercial here, and we'll be right back to speak with former bank robber Joe Loya.
And a thank you to our sponsors. Back to the program.
Welcome to the podcast, Joe Loya. How are you today?
Well, thank you. Good to be here.
It's really good to have you. We've been listening to your story for the past few days on this podcast that you've come out with. It's absolutely incredible. But for anyone out there who does not know who you are, can you give a little background on yourself and what brings you to this show today?
Once you start getting into the story, it just starts, I don't know what to talk about. I mean, the simple thing is obviously in the late 80s, I robbed 30 banks. I went to prison, and while I was in prison, I continued to commit crimes. Obviously, there's a story that got me to prison in which I was educated and kind of, really into knowledge and learning the Bible and raised hyper-religious. But then my life got torn up because my mother died and my dad was very violent. I chose violence and attacked my dad, almost tried to kill him when I was 16. So my life was very rough, got me to the banks eventually. But while in prison, I decided to change my life halfway through, became a writer, turned myself into a writer while I was in there. I grappled with all the things that got me to prison and were undermining my life. I had been introduced to peace very early in my life. I had a lot of love before things fell apart. So I knew what that felt like, and I knew I was far from it. And I knew I was tired. I didn't want to do that anymore. So I figured out all these ways and struggled through trying to change my life, which I did. And I came up 1996 and became a writer, started writing for newspapers, magazines, became a consultant in Hollywood for Baby Driver, wrote for TV, a couple TV shows, been speaking, writing, wrote a memoir, so my life is this big, huge, epic tale. More importantly, I think, is like even this last weekend, I was with my father. We laugh, we play, we get along really brilliantly. Like I repaired my relationship with my dad, which to me is probably the most dramatic thing. People think that 30 Banks is dramatic, and it is. It's cinematic. It has all those moments. But I feel like the thing with my father is the most powerful part of my story, how we had gone from having our home totally destroyed to now having a home where me and him and my brother get along beautifully. We got a lot of love for each other. We support each other. So yeah, that's my story in a nutshell, I think.
Yeah, that's good. We got to unpack some of this. You mentioned your dad. It was really shocking to hear him in the podcast speaking about what happened when you stabbed him. I do want to talk about that a little bit, but can you tell us what your life was like before your mom got sick and before that moment?
I was raised in a beautiful home, like a lot of love. My dad and my mom had a wonderful love story, weird love story, but wonderful. They met when they were 12 in East Los Angeles. My dad was a little gang member, but then he changed his life. Somebody converted him in the projects, East LA projects, and he became a Christian, Protestant Christian, in a sea of Catholics. And at 16, they got married. I was born. My mom was pregnant, so they dropped out of school. My dad started working right away, a couple jobs, hustler. But we were part of a church and we were part of a community and everyone loved them. Everyone loved, the potlucks. It was a different time too, it was the early 60s and mid 60s. So it's just different America where everyone was closer. You felt the chumminess of the neighborhood, everybody was looking out for everyone. So it was a different time, but I definitely felt the love. My mother was adorable. She was sweet, loving. And then when I was 7, she got the kidney disease and that put a lot of stress on the home. And when you put a lot of stress on the home, my dad was young. He was 24, I think. Yeah, 24, 23. And he'd had all this violent upbringing himself. He was trying to look for relief in the love. He was looking for relief in Christianity from the terror of his brutal childhood. So when the stress came, the old sort of stuff that he'd always been trying to keep down with God and love and everything, it just came up. It was this natural, all the stress, the stuff he couldn't hide, and it was violence, And so he started doing things that he didn't think he was going to do in terms of things that had happened to him as a kid, brutalizing his kids. But until then, it was a pretty loving home. I mean, my mother and my dad and the community, my dad felt accountable to them, and they were trying to do the right thing, and they were doing a pretty good job of it. And everybody supported them. They were like the little mascot Mexican family, really, really young. My dad was super erudite too. Like he was already starting to be learned by 18. He was going to, he was learning Greek and Hebrew. He really wanted to, know the Bible, know God. He was very, very, very religious that way. So yeah, it was an interesting time. I was raised and we were going to private schools. We got scholarships to private Christian schools and stuff. So I was happy. I mean, I know one of the reasons I'm joyful now and I have a good life and people will meet me and they have no idea all the violence I've committed in the world. Nobody reads any violence on me. And one of the reasons is because I know love. And one of the things that distinguished me from a lot of men in prison was I had a good feel for what love looks like and feels like, like what that frequency is where you go, whoop, and that person or that energy is love. And so I'm in a good loving relationship now. I'm at peace. I got a good loving relationship with my 19-year-old daughter. I got a good relationship with my dad, I'm vibing in a good space now, but I didn't have it after my mother got sick. It got all warped. She didn't just get sick real quick. She was slowly dying. Like they couldn't help her. They couldn't give her a new kidney for a kidney disease. So they ended up just trying a bunch of experimental drugs on her. And for 2.5 years, they just watched her shrivel and die and lose her mind. And it was terrible. It was a terrible thing for everyone to watch, that people prayed at the beginning, oh, God, deliver her. And by the last 6 months, they were like, God, take her. We know she's in pain. We know she's miserable. It was that kind of very complicated, complex situation at the time, medical and spiritual, all of it, right?
I don't know if it's irony or what to call it, but you were saying that you have this like frequency, and the anger that your father was trying to keep down started to come up because of the stress and the tension of your mother being sick. That tells me that that was always there. And you speak about that in the podcast as well, that there's this anger in you as well. And it was almost kind of boiling over and you're trying to like suppress it, and your father was. But before then, everything was about love. So you learned about love and community through your family and through your faith and, you know, the people that encouraged your family. But then once that stress came in, it was this other frequency that started to impact that love, and then you came back around. I just find that incredible.
Yeah, I mean, you're touching on something that I obviously think about and have thought about and write about a lot, because when I went in prison, those men were me. They were not me, and they were me. And I always wanted to find out, like, okay, so I ended up where you are. And then they would look at me like, oh, you belong here. I have all the rage. I have the propensity for violence that they had. I'll stab a man quick, fast, and hurry. In fact, I was more dangerous because they knew I had tried to kill my father, my own blood. Most of those guys got beat up and brutalized when they were young, and they never thought about trying to kill their dad. And so what that meant to them was like, wow, if this guy tries to kill his own blood, we're strangers. Like we really have he's not going to show us any mercy. So they recognized that I belonged there, but there was all these ways in which I didn't. Like I was super well read. I was super well educated. I was thinking outside, beyond where they were thinking. Something would happen, I would immediately think, oh, this reminds me of some great mythology, or there's some Bible verse. I had so many literary, biblical, philosophical, historical tags running around my head. Like I could always identify. So my thinking was completely different than theirs. But what got me there was this, and it made sense to me when I started peeling it back. And this goes to your question. I think that all those guys had what I had, which is we all started out optimistic. All kids do. We want to be loved, and we feel love towards the people, and that's natural. They're supposed to take care of you, and you expect to be taken care of. And then at a certain point, you love, and you see your parents not taking care of you, you still love them. You see little kids. Their parents are bad, but they still love them. They're trying to get the love from them. They're trying to do it, right? So there's all this youthful optimism and enthusiasm and love, and you hope that your parent meets it. And if a parent does meet it, guess what? That kid grows up healthy because they know I had needs and my needs were met, and my needs were met happily. There was love in that, right? Well, what happens with us is we are no different than everybody else. We are born just human with wanting love, optimism, enthusiastic for the love stuff. Let's make this a yummy thing, but our parents somehow are not up for the task. And they beat us, they bite us, they choke us, they mistreat us, they neglect us, whatever. They insult us, they tear us down. And so what happens is we're still like, please, mom, please, 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 please. And at a certain age, we become disillusioned. We know we keep going for it and it keeps getting slapped down. Keep going, it keeps getting slapped down. There's some of us who have a strong propensity for that. And what happens is the longer we hold out and want the love, it's exactly that amount that's going to be the disillusion. And the disillusion is what gets us to prison. All those men in there are sentimental men. And you know how you know? Because listen to them talk about respect. I need respect. Respect is a very sentimental thing. It's a very emotional, feeling thing. They want the thing that they didn't have. They want the respect that they didn't have. And so they also are very sentimental, and you see the way they always hug, like my brother, carnal, brotherhood, like all that stuff, right? Now, they'll kill you eventually because they're demented with rage, but they do still want to appeal to, let's be brothers, let's have a brotherhood, let's hug it out, let's be men together, blah, 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 we're soldiers together in the battle. All this romantic, sensational, sentimental about bonding, they have that in there. Criminals think like that. Now, they, like their parents, can't make it work. It's a great idea, but they can't make it, so they end up killing each other. They end up like stealing, robbing. It's a treacherous brotherhood. But that's what I noticed, is that I had all this love early, all this aspiration to like be a loving man in the world. I want to grow up, but my environment, I started realizing my dad was too violent. I couldn't reach up. And I became very disillusioned, not only with him, but when he would beat us and then he would go to the pulpit and start talking, I'd look around at all the people here and I'm like, this dude was just beating us this week. You can't see it? You can't. I got bruises on my body right now. I'm sitting there in the pews and they can't see. I started like not liking them. And I felt that their ignorance, They were loving. Their ignorance and gullibility underwrote my dad's ability to get away with beating us. And so to me, they were implicated in the violence as well. And then I just like, well, the whole church is like that. All religion, God. So I just took God. I was telling my dad this weekend, the first robbery I ever committed was against God when I stole from the offering, and we were laughing about it. He says, man, you already graduated past violating me, going against God. I said, I was beefing with God at that point. You know, it's like he was your boy and he was everyone's boy in that pew. I didn't like him. That became the basis for my anti-authoritarianism, right? It's like my anti-authority thing, my you can't tell me what the fuck to do thing. You know, like I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And in fact, I'm going to try to, as much as possible, play off the gullibility of the Christians now to my advantage, because my dad's doing it to his advantage. So yeah, it's very complicated, but I do think that I was raised with a lot of love and a lot of aspiration to be loved. And precisely because it ended up getting thwarted, that created a lot of disillusionment in me, because I thought I could have it. I didn't. I did get it for a while, and then I stopped getting it. And that was like, my crimes could be understood almost as one big whine, like, come on, I'm not getting it anymore. You know, big pouty pout.
When the abuse started in your home, when your father started to abuse you, was it a gradual process? Was it a gradual thing? And at what point did you realize this wasn't normal?
Well, you got to remember, too, that this is a different time, right? This is mid-'60s. When children behave, it was all right to hit them. That was just a thing. You know, you get hit. Nobody's going to say nothing about it. And so very young, my dad was very strict. He would whack us if we got out of line. So we got whacked. The older you got, I think that the more the stress got to him and the more demented with grief he got, he dialed it up a little bit, right? He would have to hit us a little stronger, hit us a little harder. Then it created this thing in which now I'm kind of funky. I'm not feeling good with the grief. Nobody's telling me about my mom's dying, and nobody wants me to cry after she's dead because she's with God now and I shouldn't be crying. So nobody's helping me with my grief at all. In fact, so when I express my grief, it starts being this weird thing where I'm acting out in school. You know, my dad's beating me. Nobody's helping me doing my grief. They just think I'm a sinner and a bad kid. So like, I'm going to just do what I only know how to do, is just act out. That's it. Nothing. I'm not evil. I'm just a human. And if you create these conditions, this is what we see happens. Everybody all day long is in education, knows who the traumatized kids are in school. Because guess what? We all act out. And we act out of trauma or you know, other reasons too. But certainly that. I acted out. And then my dad had to now hit me harder because I'm bigger. Now I'm in junior high, you know. And then when I'm in high school, so then it's punches and kicks. Before it was just slaps and belts. And by the time 16 comes around, you know, my dad was, you know, practically almost drowning my brother and beating us pretty good. We're 16-year-old kids. I mean, I'm only weighing 99 pounds out of the bath in a trench coat carrying 2 sacks of hammers. I mean, I was skinny, you know, like I had no meat on my bones, but still I was growing, you know, we were growing. He had to hit us bigger. So that's how it sort of gradually happened. When he got divorced, then it was dialed up because that was a different kind of stress. There was all this humiliation that went along with the second divorce, the way she left him and stuff. So there was somebody more sadistic in his abuse, you know. And that's when I was like, I think this guy's going to kill us. I think I got to kill him first before he kills me and my brother.
Yeah, that's an amazing moment in the podcast, and the way you describe sort of your decision making in that moment and how powerful it made you feel afterwards. And actually, you thought you killed him. What I was really shocked by was hearing your father after that. First of all, you guys have a good relationship now. That was surprising. But second of all, it sounded like he actually had an epiphany when you stabbed him.
The story about that's kind of comical. I don't know if he told it or me at the time, but I got out of prison and I was making a sandwich for him, and I turned around and like his back was to me, and I was here. I was at the counter and he was facing that way at the table, and I chopping the tomatoes and I put it on the thing, and then I realized, I recognized I got a knife. I'm behind him. That was ironic, right? So I'm like doing this thing, chopping up, making him a sandwich. I turn around and I see the back of his head, and he has a nodule back here where the knife went in, but I don't even think. I just see this nodule where his hair won't grow. And I'm like, hey, what's this? And I touch it. And he looks up at me like, you got to humiliate me like this? And I realized that it's the spot where I stabbed him. And I felt so shitty because I was just being, you know, I wasn't thinking. So I give him a sandwich. I put my sandwich down, and I was sitting there uncomfortable, like for 30 seconds, just like, oh shit. And this was, you know, 1996. And then he says to me, you know, when you stabbed me, the first thing I thought was the Bible says don't exasperate your children. And I had exasperated you and I knew it was my fault. I never heard him say this. This is the first thing. Then he says, but when you started trying to twist it off and break it off of my neck, that's when I realized you're just an asshole. That's just joking. He told that story in a jail in the Bay Area to all these men, where we go and talk about how all these men are in there for beating their children, their wives, their girlfriends, whatever. And there's a program that helps them develop empathy, work through their anger, that kind of. So we go and talk to them. We share our story, let them know, hey, you can rehabilitate yourself. You guys can get right. It's going to take a lot of work, but you can do it. And we go in there kind of to inspire them. He told that story to them, and it was riveting for me to look at all these men in jail with tattoos on their necks, on their face, all these hard men, just riveted by him. And then when he says, and I just knew that was just Joe being an asshole. Everyone, like the roar of laughter in there, because everyone in there has dark humor. They know, we're all as criminals, and a lot of people can appreciate dark humor. But yeah, that was a real interesting observation that he had. And I loved being part of that conversation with him.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program.
Can you tell us about the relationship between you and your brother as you were growing up, when things started to get impacted by the stress and by your mother being sick?
Growing up, my brother was my younger brother. I'm an older brother. I'm very protective, and I always took that role seriously. So my brother was always, for whatever reason, my dad picked on him more. My brother got the worst of it. He had no fight in him. My dad kind of beat the fight out of him. I'm the exact opposite. Obviously, he beat me to the point where I'm like, oh, fuck you. I'm going to have to kill you. But my brother's not very passive. One of the sweetest humans I know on this planet. I felt very protective of him, and he would just follow my lead, And it literally, even when I told him, stay here in the bathroom, I'm going to go stab Dad now. He was just like, he was my little brother, and we just went along together, and we were very close, precisely because while my mother was dying, my dad would pass us out for a week at a time to different families in the church, so my dad could handle his life, do the things he needed to do with my mother. Maybe she was going to go and be in the hospital a week, or maybe she was going to be home, or I don't know, whatever the case was, or maybe it was summer even, where he needed us to be with other people. He couldn't take care of us. We would go into these new homes, and I was always like, all right, stick by me. It made us much tighter. He was just going along, It was really hard on him. He can't remember much of his childhood from trauma. It's so vague. He has no recollection of my mother. He sees photos and he knows that's his mom, but he doesn't remember anything she looked like, said, did. And he's not in any place with her in his mind. I have memories of her, obviously. I have good memories of her. And I paid attention growing up. Being a memoirist also, one of the reasons I was able to write that story is I kept telling rolling those stories in my head. And I kept, over the years, because I would tell church friends, I would tell them the stories. I've been owning these stories forever. So I know what happened, and I got that stuff locked in. Also, I was a petty grudge holding person. I held on a lot of grudges, for things that happened to me when I was a kid. And so, I played them over and over in my head. So anyway, my brother didn't. And in a way, it protected him. He didn't grow up as messed up as he didn't grow up and be as messed up in the head as I am. Like, just sabotaging, raging. Obviously, our lives went different paths. He's a social worker who saves kids from brutal homes, and I was an angry man who committed a lot of mayhem and violence out there.
Yeah, I guess my question after that, and you kind of answered it, was like if you thought that that's a good thing, that he has no memory of that. And because it's not like he's like suppressing it, right?
I don't think it's just the brother. I think the mind is an interesting thing, right? A lot of people I know who didn't have trauma grew up and they were bullied or stuff like that, and they just try to the brain just says, okay, you're a bully, whatever. And I don't know, because I'm not the expert. I kind of feel it's like this. It's also the material that the trauma lands on. So like me, I have mental illness. People in my family have had it, some have not had it. And one side of the family, a lot of people have been mentally ill, and on the other side of the family, very little. And so, the genes get in there and they get mixed up. My brain, the material of my mind, when trauma landed on it, it had this explosive, volatile response to the trauma. My brother, who doesn't have any mental illness, like a diagnosed mental illness, hasn't been hospitalized or nothing, it landed on him, and it was like, okay, and it metabolized in his experience differently than it metabolized in mine. I can't tell you, is he suppressing it, or did it have some sort of alchemy in his system that just absorbed it and turned it into the way he moves in the world, the ethos in which he wants to do justice by kids and stuff. I can't say for sure. I'm not that guy, but I will say that I think that trauma does land differently on different minds, even if it's the same trauma, because that's why people say, well, your brother was beat. He didn't go to prison. Yeah, well, my brother's a different person. Like, we're not just equally the same slate. And if something lands on him and lands on me, we're supposed to have the same reaction to it. It's not how the mind works. And that's what I'm trying to get at. I know that it metabolized in me differently. It created this volatility in the direction of, I need to pay back somebody. And I have to figure out how I can use the utility of this body to make somebody pay back. My brother has none of that.
Well, how did you get involved in bank robbery?
So I was a petty criminal. Like most guys who come into crime, we all start close to the people we know. People with neighbors, you see them, they're friendly towards you, and you're like, well, I want to go in there and steal their savings, and I know that they keep coins in their closet or something. People, you start doing these little transgressions for what's near you and what you can see. You covet things, you want things. If you're a troublemaker, you start hanging out with other troublemakers, and then you guys are like, hey, let's go steal, and you're stealing TVs to go get drugs or whatever. Now, I was never into drugs. I was a low-level criminal, good enough so that I can make enough money to become a fugitive in Mexico. I took off with several warrants for my arrest in Southern California, and I thought, I got $40,000 or so. I can go and hide. I got a stolen car. I'll just stay there. Well, the funny thing is I was young, like 24. I'm pathetic. I'm just a low-level criminal. I'm nobody. Real criminals see me coming, and they're like, this guy, we could rob him probably. He's got something going on. Let's break into his house and find out where he's hiding all his money. And sure enough, they do. And so I come home and all my money's gone from all the little stupid hiding places I thought was hiding. It was like a really bad, like, independent movie about a guy who thinks he's all that. And then he gets fucking realizes he's not all that. And he's like, oh, but I felt like I was all that because I did know I have gravitas. It was baby gravitas at that moment. But I had stabbed my dad. Like, I had showed that I can rise to an occasion and I can do something if I put my mind to it. And so I'm like, you know what? Screw this. I need money. I need money boldly. I only got $2,000 in my pocket, $2,500, something like that. So I'm sitting there in Mexico, looking at my house, kind of torn up. All my money's gone. And I'm sitting there just drinking beer and thinking, well, Pancho Villa, he used to run into before the revolution or during the revolution, he would run in the United States. He would rip off banks and post offices in the United States and then go back into Mexico. And I thought, well, it was good enough for Pancho Villa. He was a Mexican folk hero. Like, maybe I thought, and then, the whole bandido thing is a thing. So I was like, why don't I just go in there and just do that? I never went into a liquor store. I never robbed anything like that at all. So I just start big. I was like, that's where the money is. Let's do it. So I went up there. Then, a couple of days later, drove up my stolen car, robbed a bank. And it was comical. I mean, for myself, just the setup for it, the fact that it took me all day, literally from 9-10 in the morning to practically 5 o'clock to finally, and going in and out all day, just so scared to go over that final hurdle to actually do it. So that's how it happened. I just imagined myself into that role.
Tell us about the first time, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll tell it to you. It's just whatever. I go there to rob the bank, and I go to a big busy street in San Diego, and I start walking in the banks prepared to rob them, thinking I'm prepared to rob them because I'm walking into the bank and I want to rob it, but I wasn't really all that prepared because the first one I walk into, I look around and I get a deposit slip, and I write on the back of it right there on the table in the middle of the bank, this is a bank robbery. I have a bomb, we have a gun, whatever, or we have a bomb, I have a gun, give me the money now, kind of thing. And then I realized, I don't have a feel for this. So I walk out, and when I'm walking out, I see all these cameras, and I realize if any of those cameras zoomed in on me, they would see I was attempting to rob a bank, right? And I felt stupid. So no more making notes in there. Next time I go into one, I pull out a bunch of deposit slips. And so I start going into banks, and I would be at different stages of prepared to rob them. I'd be in the line. I'd be fourth in line, third in line, second in line, and walk out. I'd walk in, next one, I'm third in line, second line, first in line, walk out. I knew something was wrong. I remember this one bank that day, though. I walk out, I don't know why I felt bad, and I go across the street right across downtown San Diego. I go right across the street, and there's a Burger King in the buildings. Like, it's just one of the shops. It's not like an independent Burger King on the side of a mini mall. It's in the building. I walk in, and when I walk in, right immediately to my right is a Wells Fargo bank guard looking at the bank. So I would have walked on, he would have seen me, and that. So like I was like, okay, something's going on here. I'm feeling something. I'm feeling uncomfortable. And I kind of believe I'm trusting myself. But the comical thing is that every time I don't rob it, I go into a local fast food joint. So it's like, I'm getting a burger here. I'm getting some French fries here. I'm having a shake over here. It's Taco Bell, Wendy's, Burger King, Mickey D's. Like all day long, I'm just like going to rob the bank, and then I'm in a fast food joint. Going to rob a bank, I'm in another one. It's just, it's a little humiliating. But I had to do the thing that I said. I had to cough up a nutsack. I had to like, finally, let's go do this. Oh, like if you're an athlete and you're like, you got to finally. Like you got to do the pole vault, you got to do the thing. And it's like, you got to just do it. So I go into this one bank. I have the note. I slide the note to her, and she looks down, and then she refuses to look up. And I'm thinking, she's reading it. And she's reading. Now it's just like, she should have read it 5, 6, 7, 8 times, right? Like, so I grab the note back and realized like this was a really ridiculous thing to do. I pull the note back, and then she pulls it to her. And I pull it back, and she pulls it back. And I'm like, oh, shit, now we're having a stupid tug of war here. And she's still not looking up. And I've lost all control of it. So I just lean in her and say, don't fuck around. I got a gun here. I pat it. I make it feel like I'm ready to jump over the counter. This is the last bank I can rob, because banks open at 10 of those days and close at 5. Now they can open. Some of them open at 9, and they stay open to 6. But back then, this is the last bank I can rob that day. That's why I have to do it. When I push her, and she gives me the money. And I tell her to walk away. And obviously that's the last time I would use a note, but I start to walk out of the bank. And as I'm hitting the door, I hear somebody say, he just robbed me, or he robbed the bank. And so I start running, and they run, and men start running to chase me. Now, back in those days, I was still athletic. I'd been a track star in high school, broke school records and shit like that. Nobody would know that looking at me now, but back in the day, I had that on mine, right? So I'm running down the street, and they can't catch me, And I eventually get to a cab, get in the cab, take off. They drop me off right before you go over the border. And I stay at a hotel that night, $4,500, something like that I got from the robbery, but I was happy. And then the next morning I woke up, get my stolen car, go to drive into Mexico. The local highway patrol has closed off the border. They're looking for stolen cars. And that's it, and that's all. I got away with that bank. They didn't know I had robbed that bank, but I had all these warrants out for me. So they catch me in a stolen car, new case, send me to prison. So I do 2 years. The whole time I'm in there thinking, I'm never doing petty crime again. I know what I'm going to do when I get out. And sure enough, I got out in 14 months of 30 banks. The FBI said between 30 and 40 on TV, and the show, I almost got away with it. They say they think I robbed between 30 and 40, but I'm pretty sure it was 30.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program.
You had a pretty incredible way to quantify it with just working a regular job. You said it took you this long to make this amount of money. I found that fascinating that you made a comparison between like an hourly wage.
What I was saying was, I dropped out of junior college because I thought, I don't want to just go through 4 years to get $50,000, for a first job. This again, when we're talking, this would have been 84 or something like that. And I thought that the best I could do at a first job would be something like that. I thought for the kind of person I was and the abilities that I had, that money should accrue to me a lot better, a lot more than that, a lot faster. And that's why I turned to crime. Just think about it. I would have spent all those years, every year, all those weeks, all those months, and a whole year to get $40,000. And here I spent 5 minutes. Give me the money. She gets me the money. I'm gone. And that 5 minutes in the bank, or less than 5 minutes in the bank, I got $4,500. And I was like, I deserve to get paid $4,500 for every 5 minutes of my life for the rest of my life. I really thought like that's better than $40,000 a year, right? So there's something about the grandiosity of it. I'm bipolar, so one of the big things about bipolar is grandiosity, and I was living the grandiosity bipolar life, man. I thought this is what I got coming. Man, I had $10,000 in my pocket. I looked at it like, this isn't going to last me through the weekend. I need to go get a lot more money. That's how I was living, I was living like my life was supposed to be like these rap videos now,
You're spending money like that, yeah?
rolling out money in the air. Like, I don't care. That's, back, but this is the early 80s. So
Can you tell us the story of what happened when your car overheated after you robbed a bank?
it's a good story. So I had just robbed several banks that day. And in fact, I robbed a bank and I was so angry with the little money I got from that bank in San Diego County. I walked in the bank next door and I robbed it, knowing the cops were on the way. This is just at this point, I was far from the first bank robbery that I did. I was bold, brazen. I brought costume changes in my car. Like I had like suits and different jackets and all that kind of stuff. So it was a big deal for me. So I'm coming home, successful day. And remember, this was in heat. I only robbed a few vaults by myself, took the manager and their kind of thing. But this is a day in which I have robbed the 4 banks, coming back, very excited. And as I'm coming back, the freeway's closed. I didn't know it at the time. There's been a shootout on the freeway. Cars crashed. Like, it was a big deal. But as I'm driving back from San Diego to LA, I see that we're now in parking lot. And parking lot means all the cars are coming behind me. We're all stopped now because they were making the 5 lanes of traffic or 6 lanes of traffic. They were whittling it down at the front to this one place that took you into Camp Pendleton there, the Marine base. And then they were moving them through or whatever. I'm thinking in my mind, oh my God, they're after me. They put a roadblock for me, of course. I'm him. I'm the guy they had to close the whole freeway down for. So I'm there and my car starts overheating. I pull it to the side of the road. So the Highway Patrol thought I was actually trying to drive on the side of the road, but I was trying to find a place I could pull over because he pulls over. I should take you in if there wasn't an accident up front. I'm like, I'm sorry, my car overheated. And he drives out. He drives off. So I get out of the car. I put like $40,000 in my big fanny pack I got, and I put it around my waist. I start walking, and all the call boxes, they have big X's mesh things on them. I guess they were repairing or they don't work. And I thought, oh, these are smart sons of bitches. And they made sure that a guy like me couldn't get off the road and get somebody else to come and get me kind of thing. So I'm really kind of worried about it. So I walk back the other way and I go down the on-ramp. I finally realize, they're moving all the cars down to this one little on-ramp in the Camp Pendleton. I walk down there. Sure enough, that Highway Patrol's down there. He's telling everyone to go into the camp. And I go up to him and say, hey, man, I wasn't kidding, man. My car overheated and now I can't drive it. Is there a gas station in here? And he goes, no, you got to get on the other side of the freeway and start walking back. And you got to go that way. I said, all right, that's fine. I go underneath the freeway. I start walking the off-ramp. Think I'm going to walk 2.5 miles back to the next on-ramp. And a Highway Patrol car pulls up right next to me. Whoop, the lights and all that stuff. And I look at them, and there's 2 guys in the front seat there. Where are you going? I said, well, the Highway Patrol guy told me I need to go this way to get help because my car overheated on the other side. And they said, get in. So I get in. And when I get in and I close it, they're like sort of inquisitive. They're being what they're supposed to be, like, so where are you going? And I'm like, oh, I'm going back to LA. And I tell them that I had met this woman in San Diego at a USC party, and it was really cool. I came down, but she got on my nerves, and I'm sure they know all about that. And at that moment, the guards dropped. Now we're all 3 guys in there hating women. You know how they are. Time clocks, always on our ass. Whoop, whoop, whoop. I get that. I feed right into that like misogynist kind of zone where now we're just shit talking women. But I also want to let them know the power dynamics are. I'm not them. And so I'm like, hey, so what happened? I heard that some sort of accident up there. And he said, yeah, one of our guys was shot. And I said, oh, I hope he's all right. And I showed all this sympathy towards the cause. Like, does he have any kids? And they're like, yeah. And so now the guards are completely dropped. And they like me. And we're laughing and we're having a good time. So we pull up 2.5 miles away. And that 2.5 minutes, when by the time they're like, hey, we can just take you further down, man. You don't have to go. I said, stop off at this rest stop, actually. I'm going to get something to eat here. And then they said, we can take you down again to another, next off ramp. There's a gas station. I said, you know what? Screw that. I'm going to have my uncle come and get his car for me, but whatever. And then when I go to get out, I'm like, hey, man, there's no handles back here. I'm like, yeah, that's where we keep the bad guys. We don't want them getting out. I said, I've never been in the back of a cop car before. So I played it completely off. They let me go. Hey, you take care of yourself. I said, thanks, officers. I appreciate it. And they take off. I called my uncle. I said, what the fuck is wrong with your shitty car? And he said, oh, you can't park. You can't stall it. You have to just keep moving. It's fine. I was like, all right, whatever. My point, though, is this. That night, I get back to my place. I get a call from a guy I had spent some time in the San Diego County Jail when I got arrested that time at the border. And he says, have you been doing work down here? And I'm like, yeah. Yeah, I have. He says, they got you on Crime Stoppers. They say that they think you're Indian and Pakistani and that you live in Tijuana. But they're looking, they got your photo. I knew it was you. I was like, okay, thanks. I appreciate it. So then that made me think, like, when those police officers, those highway patrol got into work the next day and they saw this photo of the guy who robbed 4 banks and they're like, be on the lookout for this guy. I wonder if they told everyone, oh, we had that guy in our car, or if they just looked at each other like, do not say a goddamn thing. We don't know this. And maybe, what do you guys think? What do you think happened?
Well, I really wanted the story to end where you tipped them like $100 each from the from your bank robbery money.
What do you think? Do you think they would tell? They would think they would give the intelligence and say, "Oh, he was going to LA," or do you think they'd just say, no?
I think they would never say anything, even to each other, and like because they probably both knew. But in my opinion, they probably wouldn't even bring it up.
Right. There was probably enough vagueness in there where they could justify to themselves to be like, it probably wasn't the guy. But they deep down knew, you know?
That's a fun story.
That it really is a great story. How did you get caught eventually?
I got caught twice. One, I was driving past it the other day with my girlfriend down to Orange County. I robbed a bank and I'm walking out. I get in the car, I change my clothes, and now I go from wearing this one outfit that made me look really heavy at the time to now I'm in shorts. I got skinny legs. I got shorts. I got tank top on. I got a UCLA tank top. I got a cap, baseball cap. I'm dressed completely differently. And I drive away. I get in the freeway, and all of a sudden these like three highway patrols zip right by me, and I'm like, whoa, shit. I look forward up ahead, and there's a helicopter. I'm thinking, oh my God. They kind of know I'm going in this direction, so I get off the freeway. I don't want to go there. And so when I'm off the freeway, all these cop cars are around me. They start coming around my car, and they're all, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? As I keep driving, there's these police cars like a gauntlet. They're facing me at the gas station or parking lot. And as soon as I pass them, they all get behind me. And now I got 15, 20 cars behind me. And they decided, and one cop pulls up on my left. Now I'm just driving. They've isolated me. And then one car pulls up on my right. And what they have is I have a transmitter on the money. I don't have any clue I have it. And what they're on their dashboard, if the money's ahead of them, it's like points ahead. It's not behind them, and it tells them. So they were trying to triangulate me, figure out that it was me. And sure enough, so when they were pulling the side, it would say it's ahead, and here he is here. Like, so they got me. They pulled me over. I get arrested for that. But because I look different, and they brought the 2 women who had just been robbed to the sidewalk to see if I was the guy. They got the money, but they want to know if I'm the guy. The 2 women are like, yeah, that's not the guy. So the only thing they could actually hold me for was possession of stolen property. And they don't know who I am as a bank robber yet. I go to court a couple of days later, and there's this board that they have, and there's 16 photos of me on. They tell the judge, this is the Beirut Bandit. We got him at 16 banks so far. We're still counting. Yeah, we didn't get him for bank robbery on this case, but we want to hold him because we know that he robbed all these banks.
What's your anxiety level when you start realizing, like, okay, all of this activity with the police cars is probably about me?
It's funny that I thought that they didn't have a case against me because I don't look like the guy. I don't know why they chose me. So I'm thinking this is a racist rush to judgment. They're just like, we decided to hone in on this Mexican dude, And I don't even look particularly dastardly. As it is, I don't look like the typical bank robber. Most of the guys I knew in prison are bank robbers or gangbangers. And they rob because they need to subsidize a drug habit. I robbed because I wanted to subsidize golfing and nice clothes and going to, concerts and shit like that. I'm not them. I'm not a gang member. I wasn't a gang member. So I didn't understand why they were stopping me. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to fight this in court. And so when they pull me over, all I'm thinking is I'm just going to be smart. I'm just going to yell out, why'd you stop me? I'm going to fight it in court. They had no reason to stop me. And again, not realizing that the money was in there. So I wasn't as panicked as much as I thought, I got it out. And just, there's a sort of arrogance about, it's a different mindset, right? I'm sure if there's a felony stop on me now, I'd panic, shit myself. Like, what the? I'm not that guy. I'm not that rageful young guy I was back then.
Did you like that you had a nickname?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that's a really good. Nobody's ever asked it that way. Never have asked me that. I actually love that I got a nickname. I hate my nickname, but what do you do? What are you going to do? I hate my name, Joe. So, but I do like that I got the tag. When I found out that they call me the Beirut Bandit, I was like, what the? a lot of the tellers, they did not think I was Mexican. In Southern California, they expected an accent, or they expect so racist. They expected me to have like tattoos on. They literally would say, I don't think he was Mexican. He didn't have any tattoos on his hands or his neck, like gang tattoos kind of stuff. And he didn't speak with an accent. So we think and I was very dark, a lot of Mexican Indian blood. So I get very dark. And I thought I was Indian or Pakistani. And so for whatever reason, they thought, oh, India and Pakistan, that's Middle Eastern. And so they went from Middle Eastern to Lebanon, and now I'm the Beirut Bandit. Couldn't be further away from New Delhi or, or Kandahar as possible. But there you go. What are you going to do?
That's fantastic. So what was prison like? And can you tell us a little bit about your decision to write a book?
Yeah, prison sucked, man. Prison is everything you've seen and more. There are elements of prison that were interesting. In fact, I wrote a post yesterday about how prison was terrible. It was terrifying. It was traumatic. I got in a lot of trouble. I caused a lot of trouble. And, 2 years almost in solitary confinement for investigation of crimes that they thought I committed behind bars. So it was like very traumatic, especially for me, landing on my brain and my trauma, compounded my traumas. So I came out. And even though I came out with probably one of the best, softest landings you could have, a lot of love, people supporting me. They say, hey, you're going to be a writer. We're going to help you become a writer, that kind of thing. And a lot of support. It was still challenging because, prison's terrible. And I suffered a lot. And so that said, it wasn't harder for me than it is for other people. There's a lot of people it's worse on. But I made the most of it, meaning I'm a storyteller. So what I got from that, a lot of stories. And obviously all the stories that landed on me. I have friends from that I still know there. In fact, my girlfriend and I are going to go hang out in July with a guy I did time with out in Boston. We're going to go and hang out with him in Connecticut. So I made lifelong friends. And another thing too is I laughed a lot. A lot of those guys are really funny, darkly funny. And I was darkly funny. So there's that. In fact, when I was going to come out, people were like, hey, Joe, right? Make criminals funny. Tell them we laugh. Because in Michael Mann movies, nobody ever laughs. And some of the funniest guys I met in prison were killers. There's a great line from the short story writer Flannery O'Connor. She says, the maximum amount of seriousness admits the maximum amount of comedy. That's my ethos. I can write terribly dark things. Like, for example, I tried to kill my father. That's as dark as it gets. I left him yelling on the carpet, you killed me, you killed me. And then years later, we're laughing in the kitchen when he's like, and then when you tried to break it off of my neck, I knew you were an asshole. Like, that's a maximum amount of seriousness and admits a maximum amount of comedy. And so I love that about prison. That's one thing that it gave me, a lot of stories, and I got to laugh a lot. And what made me a writer? Oh, I'm a storyteller. I was always going to be a storyteller. I'm a preacher's son. I thought I was going to be telling Bible stories, which I still might one day because I got a funny, dark take on Bible stories now that's not like your average church Bible story goer would be listening to on Sunday. But I do love stories. I was raised loving stories. I was a voracious reader. And so I went into solitary confinement. I just started writing things that happened to me and turned myself into a writer.
Do you have any advice for anybody who is in a position that you were in back when you were feeling all of this rage and this anger and you're trying to suppress it and it would come, boil over? I'm sure there's so many people out there who could use your story and hear that it is possible to go through this and to be rehabilitated.
That's a good question, man. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of things. I think the number one thing that I never understood, but when I did understand it, it radically altered my life. People would say, what's happening to you is an illusion. And I'd be like, how's an illusion? I'm like actually feeling it. What they really tried to get at, what I eventually figured out, is that I thought I was getting angry because what was happening to me. Oh, you said that, you made me mad. I would get mad at people and say, why'd you make me I told you don't do that, or I was going to have to hit you. I told you don't do that, or there was going to be consequence. Like I would make it sound as if they did something and I had no other option. I was compelled to do something, like come at them that way. I felt that all my behavior was triggered by other people and I had no free will or agency. All I knew was that, hey, I can warn you in advance, don't do that, or else this is going to happen. Right now, I got it in check, I got it in control, but I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to control it. That's bullshit. I learned in prison. And there's a whole way in which the book talks about it, and the memoir. I hope you guys get to promote my memoir, The Man Who Outgrew His Prison Cell. Confessions of a Bank Robber. I detail this in one of the prison section where I changed my life. I learned the most fundamental truth, which goes to your question, that I can't change what people do to me, but I can change my reaction to it. And once I developed those tools, the first thing I figured was like, I got to give myself 2 or 3, 4, 5 seconds to think about it before I act. How do I make 0 seconds become 1, 2, 3? Like, I literally was in prison thinking, I got to do that or I'm never going to stay out of prison. And so I found out how to do that through meditation, through changing and reframing things. Reframing meaning, oh, they did that to me yesterday. I would have felt compelled to stab them. But today, when you do the same thing, I look at it like, oh, man, you're in pain. Oh, you're suffering. That has nothing to do with me. You were like this before you even met me. You're drunk driving. You want to be in an accident. You're kind of crazy and chaotic, but I have nothing to do with that. So I realized that that's the way I wanted to live. And if I was going to stay free and if I wanted to get back to the peace and love and happiness and joy that I felt, that frequency that we were talking about at the very beginning, then I needed to do that to get to that. Now, people do things to me now that friends of mine get so angry about, like, why can't you be angry? I'm like, because they're in pain. They did that, and you want me to be mad because you want me to think, oh, they're doing it to me. And I'm like, they didn't do it to me. Yeah, there's consequences for me, but I don't get mad in the way I used to because I don't look at it like I'm supposed to get mad. I look at it like they're doing their thing. That's how I was able to get past my dad. I looked at him and I one day had compassion and said, oh, no wonder he did all that stuff. He was brutalized. What else was he going to do? It was modeled to him. He knew no other way. He actually did so much good beyond what was shown to him. Let's concentrate on that. Let's look at the good my dad did, even though none of that was shown to him, despite the fact he had such a brutal upbringing. And that compassion allowed me to move through the world, to get to where I am now, where I, do work in Hollywood. I help people change their lives. I talk to kids, adults, at this point. Now I get to talk to you guys about it. So, it's a good life I have. And then I'm going to leave you guys. I'm going to go hang out with my girlfriend. I'm going to have a great day.
Well, very good. Thank you so much for joining us, Joe. This has been a great conversation and a great podcast. And we'll definitely put links to listen to the podcast and buy your book in the show notes.
Okay, don't forget, joeloya.ltd. Boom, that's me. Buy the book there.